Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this important webinar. In a moment, I'm going to hand this over to Madeline Hoffman, who can talk more about the webinar, but it's important at this moment of extreme warmongering, saber-rattling, and imperialist conquest around the globe that we show solidarity with our comrades in Latin America. And that is why, as the Green Party, we need to be the party that can do that, because we know that on both sides of the aisle, the warmongering goes on, whichever party of war in Wall Street you have in power. So I want you all to know that I will be coming in occasionally to fundraise for the Green Party of the United States, because at this time we need to be able to grow and get stronger, because there needs to be a strong alternative to the parties of war in Wall Street. And what you can do to help makes all the difference. So with that, I am going to introduce my dear friend and the co-chair of GPACS, Madeline Hoffman. She is a dedicated environmentalist and peace activist. Madeline served as the director of the New Jersey Peace Action from 2000 to 2018, and has been a prominent figure in the Green Party, running as their candidate for US Senate in 2018 and 2020, and for governor of New Jersey in 1997 and 2021. Madeline is currently living in Colombia, which gives her a unique perspective on this entire situation. Madeline, take it away.
Okay, Rose, thank you. Um, yes, I'm very happy to be a part of this webinar tonight. Uh, and Rose sort of hinted at it already. Uh, we hear Donald Trump, excuse me, we hear Donald Trump talking a lot. And one of the things that he says that is particularly concerning right now is that once he's done, whatever that means, with Iran and the war over there, he's going to turn his sights on Cuba. And we all know that there's been a blockade against oil, most oil entering into Cuba. And we know Leonardo is going to be able to, and Angela will tell us more about that. But Leonardo informed me just a few minutes ago that the Senate rejected a resolution against military action towards Cuba. So that option is still on the table. And so we can't forget our friends to the South. Unfortunately, in my life, I only really started to learn about our friends to the South. Uh, my first trip here into Colombia in 2019. And after that, I said, why did it take me almost 70 years of my life before I turned my sights as a peace activist and as a solidarity human rights activist? Why did it take me so long to turn my sights to Latin America? And so I just wanted to just mention a couple things. The other thing that Donald Trump said is that he wants to change the name of the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency from ICE to NICE. And I thought, ICE, Orwellian newspeak, doublespeak all over again. I mentioned Cuba's next. And I thought before Leonardo gave me the news about what happened, that maybe the US Congress would have become tired of war, tired of all the threats, tired of all the expenses, $2 billion a day for an illegal war of aggression that should never have happened. So we're in a position now where we really need to anticipate what might be happening around the world, and with our eyes are focused on Latin America tonight, and ways that we can build solidarity. And I'm going to introduce Lily Benavides to start on that. With Lily is a friend of mine, longtime friend of mine. Also, I shouldn't say also, she is the genuine article. She is Colombian. I am only transplanted to Colombia. And there's some things coming up in Colombia in the next month that I think Lily will focus on. So take it away, Lily.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you all. Yeah, as Madeline said, I'm from Colombia and I've been living in the United States for 36 years. And I'm an active member of the Green Party. About Colombia, we are going to have a presidential elections on May 31st. And as a continuation of Petro's governance, we have a candidate which is Ivan Cepeda, and he's more than 40% on those polls. If we know the polls are right or not, I'm not sure, but he's the favorite one from the people of the communities. We're not talking about the elite, right, or the right wing. And they are doing everything in their hands to try to stop him. Not just because they don't want all the ideas and stuff that Petro has done so far to continue, but also because he's way stronger than Petro. And many of them know that they are going to end up in jail. So there's an issue right now, there's a situation right now. There's a program called Operation Jupiter, and they are working with people from United States in Latin America, like the president of Ecuador, Noboa. So to do a dirty campaign on Ivan Cepeda in the news, they are helping, pushing all these lies for people to, to believe this and change their mind about it. But because of all the work they have done in the communities, on the streets, with the farmers, all over the country, because this is the first time that an administration has gone to so many places around the country, so many towns that they were never ever visible at all. And they have started health clinics and schools and all kinds of things, and all the help for the farmers with some agricultural program, and they have taken back lands that were taken by right-wing people, and giving them back to them. Even the president, even knowing that that was not right, he had to go and buy those lands and pay these people to take it back so he could give it back to the people that own it, right? So there's so many things going on, and they try to make it look bad and say that Ivan Cepeda and Petro are allied with drug dealers and trafficking. And there was a moment when the New York Times was posting articles like that, and then they had to go back and say that that wasn't true. So, and also the right wing here, especially in Miami, Maria Elvira Salazar and Diaz Balart and others, they love Uribe, and they are always saying that he was the best president and they want him back. And Trump had said a few things, and he had this thing with Petro that supposedly he came and they talked and everything seemed to be okay, but we knew it wasn't. It was just, a plan. So, but I, so we are asking everyone, to share the information, the right information, to talk to people about this, to support us, because we need everybody on this. Myself, I have worked at the polls on the elections here in United States for Colombians. I did it 4 years ago. Madeline was part of that too, and I'm doing it again this year, because we have to be there on the table and keep an eye on all these parties that are trying to cheat. This past in March, right? We had Senate and Congress elections, and it took them a long time in Bogota to get the results. They were hiding boxes of votes. I mean, the administration, Petro administration, had to get lawyers from everywhere to be there and ask, to be transparent about this. And then at the end, there were thousands of votes that were not counted. That we got Senate and Congress seats back. That wasn't there. So, and that's why I said to Madeline, yeah, I will do this because I want people to know what's going on in Colombia and that we need a lot of support. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lily.
Rose, I forgot to introduce Lily properly. I introduced her from what
Oh.
I know, my own experience. So I just want to add that Lily is a U.S. activist for human rights and immigrant rights. She served as a Democratic member of the New Hampshire House of Representatives from 2007 to 2009. I doubt she will ever serve as a Democrat again. She ran as a Green Party candidate for governor in 2025 and is the co-chair of the Green Party's Latinx caucus. And if you don't mind, Rose, can I add just a couple things to what Lily said?
Sure.
Okay. I am working in Colombia where I live with committees who are promoting Ivan Cepeda, because the push is to get him to win in the first round, to get more than 50% of the vote the first time through. And I can tell you that there's so much enthusiasm for him. But one of my worst nightmares is if the people, what's the group that Lily mentioned who's intervening or working,
Operation Jupiter.
the Jupiter group. One of my worst nightmares is to have an Uribista, the opposition, in power in Colombia, along with Donald Trump in the White House. It's a nightmare scenario. So yeah, let's keep our eyes on what's going on. And remember that Trump was bombing all these boats or having these boats bombed for narco trafficking, when he also pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was sentenced to 45 years for narco trafficking in Honduras. And he'd served 2 or 3 years of that. And Trump says, you're clear, you can go back to Honduras. So we just have to keep our eyes and ears open. All right. Thank you. Thank you,
Madeline, and thank you, Lily. And I just want to say that we have candidates, human rights activists like Lily as candidates. She ran for governor in 2025 because we're a party that does not take super PAC money. We don't take corporate money. And that's why I'm here asking for anything you can give tonight so that we can keep attracting amazing candidates like Lily. And with that, I also want to mention, I did forget this earlier, there is going to be a Q&A. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A and we will present them to the panelists. And with that, I'm going to introduce you all to Mark Dunlea. Mark Dunlea has been working for social justice issues for decades. A co-founder of the Green Party of New York, he spent 30 years working for the Hunger Action Network of New York and is the chair of the Green Education and Legal Fund. Mark has authored several books, including Putting Out the Planetary Fire. He's the co-chair of the Green Party's Eco Action Committee. Mark, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And undoubtedly, I'm the person tonight who has the least personal experience with South America. But we wanted to talk about some of the ways that eco-action issues we work on overlaps with the environmental issues in South America. And undoubtedly, the biggest issue that eco-action works on is the issue of climate change. And I was Howie Hawkins' campaign manager back in 2010 when he was the Green Party candidate for governor in New York. And he introduced in the United States the concept of the Green New Deal, an eco-socialist Green New Deal, which actually we had taken from the European Greens who had done it 2 to 3 years previously. But the idea was to combine a very rapid transition to clean energy, stop the burning of fossil fuels, zero emissions, 100% recyclable, renewable energy, and to also include that with an economic bill of rights. The right to a living wage job, to guaranteed income, affordable housing, single-payer health care, and a college education. Honestly, climate change is a global problem, and it has been the pollution, the burning of fossil fuels that have been driven by the United States and other industrial polluters, which are having a major negative impact upon countries in South America and in the global South. We certainly support the concept of polluters should pay for the damage they created, and that should include, of course, reparations to these countries that did not cause climate change, but in fact are suffering it. And climate change, of course, already is a major impact in terms of refugees and migrants who are forced to flee as the climate makes farming even less sustainable. Certainly one big issue in South America has been the loss of glaciers from climate change, particularly in places like Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, who are seeing what they call the water towers begin to disappear. And as the drought has increased in South America, the loss of the glaciers are, a major problem. Another issue is the issue of deforestation, and certainly the agricultural practices in the United States, where we import a lot of beef from South America, as well as soybeans, is contributing to the deforestation that we're seeing place. Eco-action very opposed to a lot of the mining activities that take place. We've been very strong in opposing frack in New York State. After Howie Hawkins' gubernatorial race, we did get the state to agree to ban fracking, basically extracting, natural gas. And, one of the issues, of course, big in South America is the issue of rare elements, and that's caused a lot of destabilization. Brazil, Chile, and Argentina are particularly places that do see significant rare earth elements. Another issue that I work on, particularly my wife runs a group called Beyond Plastics. Plastics are the new coal. And the United States, unfortunately, one way we deal with plastics is we export it to a lot of countries. Big problem in Asia and the Caribbeans, but we also export a lot of our plastic waste to Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Ecuador, and El Salvador. One of the issues where South America is much ahead of us, but we copy here with Eco Action, has been the issue of the rights of nature. Given legal rights to, I believe bees just in the Amazon were given legal rights. But probably the best country in the world for the rights of nature has been Ecuador. In the 2008 Constitution has Chapter 7, the rights of nature. Bolivia has also done quite a bit. At the more local level, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, and Mexico have various provincial and local laws, as well as Colombia. And trying to give rivers and ecosystems, one of the things the Green Party was active with was given, I believe it was Lake Ontario out in Ohio, was given some legal rights. But as I said, South America is very much ahead of that. Reparations, that was one of the things that really, and the various climate accords, the United States talks a little bit about the need to help, other countries that we, of course, climate change, global warming, pay to try to deal with the problems, but we don't actually put, money on the table. I think there was some rhetoric at the recent COP in Brazil, but actual money, was quite lacking.
1 minute, please, Mark.
1 minute. So that's what Eco Action does. We probably do a lot more, connections with that, and I'll leave it at that.
No, you have time to add a couple things.
One of the things we're working on right now, I don't know how big it is in South America, is nuclear power. Nuclear power is making a major renaissance here in the United States, particularly in New York. Certainly in indigenous nations in the United States, native lands is where a lot of the uranium is given, because we thought that land was not worth anything. So that's what we threw the native populations onto. And I know that extraction has been a big problem in South America as well.
Thank you. That's your time.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to say that if anybody could even give $5, $10 tonight, that would make such a big difference. And again, this is an important conversation, that sometimes you can have fundraising webinars and very enthusiastic, whatever you want to say. And that's not the tone for tonight. But I also want to say that what makes it important is we need to be able to challenge an entire government that we're up against.
If you want to call it that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the best word I can come. And a duopoly, agents of war on Wall Street. And there's a reason that they have a lot of money, because the merchants of war and imperialism and pollution and climate destruction, they're the people who fund them. And I will quote Butch Ware, who has more of a flair for this kind of thing than me, but who funds you, runs you. And that is why the Green Party answers to the people, because we only get funding from the people. And that's how we can be a party of we the people. So I'm asking if You know, if it's $5, if it's $10, if you are so inclined to do a monthly donation in that realm. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying don't give more because you could, and I'm not going to stop you. But I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, you know, I only have a few dollars because people are struggling these days. I only have, and that's not going to make any difference. It does. And if you can do it, please do it. And with that said, I'm going to give the floor back to Madeline Hoffman, who I have already introduced, but once again, she is an activist for peace extraordinaire, and living in Colombia, she has a unique perspective on this situation that I'm glad she's here to share with us. Madeline, take it away.
Thank you, Rose. We've heard a lot already about what's going on in Colombia now and other parts of South America. I apologize. You might hear my cat. This is her hour to make contact with other cats in the neighborhood. But I was really, really excited to hear Mark talk about the work that the Eco Action Committee is doing, because what we wanted to do with tonight, and Lily also talked about it in terms of the upcoming presidential election, we wanted to talk specifics. We wanted to talk about specific ways people could help. And I'm sure Angela and Leonardo will give us other specific ways that we can act in solidarity. Mexico, Venezuela, and Cuba and others. I'd forgotten about Ecuador. And one of the things that was done between Ecuador and the US wound up with a bomb finding its way onto Colombian property. Was it accidental? You can't, I wouldn't think so. It's another way of provoking, of trying to get responses from the people in Latin America. And we know the minute there's some kind of violent, quote unquote, violent response from the people, it will spark more violence from the US government. I wanted to and I wanted to add a couple things about BRICS and what we're seeing with like a realignment of power and realignment of currency, what currency is used and what currency is not used. And I remember just 2 or 3 years ago talking about BRICS and saying, "Oh, that's a nice idea. It'll come around in a way, in a few years." It's here now. You see it. Because of Venezuela, because of the what's happened off the Colombian coast, because of the blockade of oil in Cuba, or for Cuba. You see these alignments shifting. You see Russia and China coming to the assistance of Iran also. And it's to help the world economy or to create an alternative world economy, not based on the US dollar. And I don't think the US officials like that very much, but people are working to protect themselves, to survive economically. And in my opinion, it's a good thing to take the hegemony away from the US, because the US seems to have just one approach and one approach only. Do it our way or else. I mean, every time I hear some talk about Iran, my stomach hurts and my head hurts because it goes against everything I've ever been taught and everything I believe about how to achieve world peace. And I mean, living in Colombia, I've lived here during the entire genocide, or this phase of the genocide in Gaza, and I've been so lucky to live in a country where the president knows what it's like to be to experience colonization, to experience imperialism, who, immediately said he opposed what was going on in Gaza, what Israel was doing in Gaza, and that Colombia had had its own genocide going back several decades, and the paramilitaries in Colombia were trained by former IDF soldiers. So we really need to break that alignment, and it's there. It's there for the taking, if you will. I don't want to sound like the guy in the White House. No, we're not going to take things that aren't ours. But I think people are seeing the hypocrisy of the US. I think they are seeing how this could be done better. And I am excited to be a part of it. Yeah, and I told you my biggest fear would be to have an Uribista in Colombia along with Trump. And then you add Milei from Argentina and the fellow from El Salvador whose name is escaping me right now, where some of the people detained by ICE wound up. I mean, there's just so much cruelty coming out of the country I used to live in. And I am so happy to see and hear that people want to and coordinate efforts. And the extractivism, the gold minings, the silver mining, the coal mining, it's pulling and extracting resources out of resource-rich Latin America in order to profit people who don't live in Latin America, while campesinos can't afford to put food on their table, while the producers are in big trouble. So I don't know how much time I have, but I basically said what I needed to say. And I'm grateful to everyone who's here, everyone who's spoken and who's going to speak. And I'm supposed to introduce somebody, right? You're muted, Rose.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, Leonardo.
I'm to introduce Leonardo or Angela.
No, Leonardo.
Okay.
And
So Leonardo, that's right. Leonardo is somebody that GPAC's Green Party Peace Action Committee had invited to speak about a month ago at a webinar on a similar topic. And Leonardo was with Code Pink at the time. He was in Cuba and he was going to speak when he arrived back in the US after that mission to Cuba, bringing humanitarian aid and such. And maybe he'll tell you more, but in short, his devices were confiscated at the border, and the video he was going to record for our webinar never happened because he didn't get his devices back for a couple of weeks. So we're really glad that he was able to make it tonight. And he is an activist on Venezuela, former analyst at the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C., a founding member of the Venezuela Solidarity Network and the Alliance for Cuba Engagement and Respect. So we are really honored to have him here tonight. Thank you, Leonardo, for being here, and thank you, Angela, for helping to arrange it.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much, Madeline. Thank you, Rose, as well. And thanks to the great party for the invitation. Yeah, so I was in Cuba last month. And as Madeline said, on my return, Customs and Border Patrol seized my devices and as well as the devices of 18 of the 20 people I was traveling with. And it was clear that they targeted us for our Cuba activism. We had brought humanitarian aid to Cuba, and the situation in Cuba right now is incredibly difficult. The fuel blockade is causing many crises, including, rolling blackouts that affect hospitals. Just today, or just yesterday, actually, there was this really interesting article or report that came out from the Center for Economic Policy Research that found that over the last 8 years of Trump's increasing sanctions on Cuba, that it has caused a rise in infant mortality of 148%, meaning an extra 1,800 Cuban infants have died in that interim because of the Trump sanctions. And when we look at what Trump has done, and then the same is true for Biden because he didn't take any actions to countermand the Trump attacks on Cuba. Trump has gone after, I would say, three of the main sources of Cuba's income, which are tourism. Right now, it's incredibly difficult to even get to Cuba, especially from Europe because of the fuel blockade. Planes can't refuel in Cuba. He's gone after remittances as well. At one point, he stopped them altogether. Now there's more conditions and less money being able to be sent to Cuba. And he's also really stopped Cuba's medical cooperation programs for which they receive a lot of money. And over the past several months, you've had countries like Guatemala and Honduras and Jamaica, among many others, and their cooperation missions with Cuba, which not only hurts Cuba's economy, but also hurts the local populations that were receiving help from these Cuban doctors. And unfortunately, as Madeline mentioned earlier, there was a war powers vote. It failed. It didn't even get to a vote. They blocked it before it could actually get to a vote, but it failed 51-47, mostly along party lines. John Fetterman voted with Republicans yet again, whereas what's her name, Susan Collins and Rand Paul voted with the Democrats. But that doesn't mean it's over. We should still be pushing for a war powers vote in the Senate. There's also a war powers vote in the House. I'll share a document that Code Pink prepared that has some other pieces of legislation that for Cuba that we can support. I'll put that in the chat after I'm done speaking. But the situation in Cuba, it's really reminds me of everything that was going on to Venezuela prior to the attack on January 3rd in terms of all of this discourse about a possible deal. And yet at the same time, the U.S. is carrying out military exercises. Just on Monday, U.S. Southern Command was posting about how they were carrying out military exercises using AI and drones and other surveillance systems off Key West, obviously directed at Cuba. They again use the excuse of narco trafficking, but Cuba is actually the biggest success story in the Americas in terms of stopping narco trafficking. So it's just a pretext. It's a pretext for war and regime change. The Cuban people I spoke to while I was there, to a person, even the people who didn't like the government said that they did not obviously want any sort of U.S. invasion or attempted occupation, and that they would be willing to defend their country by any means. And so, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that defense because it's really hard for a country that has, very bare bones military budget to defend against drones and missile strikes. Clearly, the U.S. at this point, it's unlikely that they will invade and occupy, but it's not certainly a very real possibility that they might just attempt to kill the Cuban leadership. Obviously, we have to stop this if we can and raise our voices against this. But really, it just goes back to show how we've had 66 years of economic warfare against Cuba aimed at specifically at changing the government. And the U.S. has been very clear since 1960. There was this letter that was published by an assistant secretary of state that was released. And in it, he writes, and I'm paraphrasing, we have to cause hunger and desperation in Cuba so that they can rise up and change their government. And none of this has happened. So now the U.S. is taking other measures, extreme measures, apparently. And we hope it doesn't happen, but I fear that it might. I also wanted to speak a little bit about Venezuela, of course, to understand a little bit about this attack and the kidnapping on January 3rd. And to understand that, you really have to know that for the past more than 25 years, the United States has been waging a hybrid war on Venezuela. And that includes attempted coups, attempted color revolutions, acts of terror and sabotage, and again, economic warfare that is killing tens of thousands of Venezuelans every single year, and that has cost the Venezuelan economy $630 billion over the past 12 years or so. 12 years. So right now you have President Maduro and his partner Celia Flores, who herself, she's an elected member of the National Assembly. They're being held hostage, basically. They're in a New York prison in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Uh, and yet the constitutional order in Venezuela is still in place. So it's important to note that there's been no coup, no uprising, no civil war, in short, no regime change, despite the attack on January 3rd. So while it may have been, or certainly was, a successful military attack, it didn't reach the political ends that the Trump administration wanted. And so while we see Venezuela, or many people see Venezuela as somehow submitting to the US and giving in every possible way, the truth is a lot substantially more nuanced, right? Because actually Venezuela is resisting, and the US is understanding that they can't get everything they want in Venezuela. If they could, the scenario would be totally different. You would have someone like Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, being installed as a puppet president, and she had promised to give corporations $11.3 trillion worth of Venezuelan resources, and none of that is happening, right? In fact, there's been positive developments, like the recognition of Delcy Rodriguez as the acting president, which really also goes to serve as a de facto recognition of President Maduro, because one of the things that the US had done is that they had never recognized any of the three elections that Maduro had won. So now they recognize his successor, but that just means that if she's legitimate, then he must have been legitimate. And then we might see that argument play out in US courts. Also, we're seeing kind of sanctions relief to a certain extent by the United States. There's been 14 sanctions related licenses, and these range from oil and gold to the central bank to a wide variety of economic sectors. Venezuela has now been recognized at the IMF, which sounds horrible, but at the same time, the IMF has this thing called special drawing rights, which Venezuela had been forbidden from accessing. And these were released during the COVID pandemic, and almost every country in the world had access to them, but Venezuela and a few others. And that means that now Venezuela will be likely have access to an extra $5 billion, which is not a loan and doesn't have any conditions to it. Venezuela is now, there are talks about reincorporating Venezuela into Mercosur, which is the common market of the South, which is Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and several other countries. And just today, the news came out that Delcy Rodriguez has been invited to the Ibero-American Summit, which in Spain, which is taking place in November. So now even countries in Europe are recognizing Delcy Rodriguez. In short, Venezuela, is being normalized to a certain extent after the decades of attempts at diplomatic isolation by the United States. And yeah, we can talk about how, the United States controls the trade in oil because there's only 2 oil traders authorized to trade in Venezuelan oil. But oil is still not privatized. Oil still belongs to the Venezuelan people. There have been changes in the oil and mining laws, but these changes were already contemplated before January 3rd, and they were meant to attract greater investment. And one of the things we see is that there's been absolutely no change in social policies. And in fact, there's supposed to be an increase of the minimum wage on May 1st, so we'll see how much that increases. There's still a heavy emphasis from the Venezuelan authorities on this concept of people's power and a participatory democracy. The communes are still intact. There's still civil military police unity. There have been no new elections. And so when we're kind of assessing the impacts of January 3rd, obviously everyone is angry about it. But I think among the people who are most angry about it, weirdly, are Venezuela's fascists, because they've been totally sidelined. The Trump administration and Trump himself has basically said that Maria Corina Machado, the so-called opposition leader, has no support in Venezuela. And she's actually on a tour of Europe right now calling for regime change, calling for more actions to be taken to destroy Venezuela. So they're not happy at all when I say the Venezuelan fascists, because then they claim that the regime is still intact. But weirdly, we're seeing Democrats, or at least some of them, attack Trump on Venezuela from the right because they're using this argument as well. So I think the long-term prospects for Venezuela are still going to be incredibly a challenging, difficult situation, because there are very few people in U.S. Congress right now, or that have, White House aspirations, that have kind of a clear view of respecting Venezuela's sovereignty, unfortunately.
1
I
minute,
don't know
please, Leonardo. 1
Yes, and so I think the best thing we can do for Cuba right now is to push for all these certain bills that I will share in the chat. And in terms of Venezuela, there's nothing in Congress, but a good thing to do would be to write to President Maduro, write to First Lady Celia Flores, because they're in jail, and it's a very difficult situation for them. And I'll share also how to write to them. Thank you.
Thank you
Wow.
so much. Very important work that all of our panelists are doing. and we're grateful for that. And as Leonardo just pointed out, we have a Democratic Party that tries to come at Donald Trump from the right. He's not he's not regime changing enough. And what a dangerous state of affairs we're in. And again, that's why I am asking for people to support the Green Party, help us be in a position to be as strong as possible, because when you give, we grow, and we need to grow at this time. It's a moral imperative. It's a global crisis that is not going to be easy to get out of. We all know that, but we need to be in as strong a position as possible, and that's why I am asking what you can do. Again, got a few bucks, got $5. There's no amount too small, because if anything, it's people like me, because I'm one of those people who has to count, do I have enough for this? Do I have enough for that? And we're the ones who have to step up right now, because we know the rich aren't doing it. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our last speaker, and that is Dr. Angela Merino. Hold on. Dr. Angela Merino is the author of Populism and Performance in the Bolivarian Revolution of Venezuela, and several other articles concerning political cultures, revolutionary society, and the arts in Venezuela. She's a professor of the University of California at Berkeley and lead faculty of the Critical Perspectives on Democracy and Media of the American Hemisphere. Thank you so much, Angela. Take it away.
Thank you, Rose, and for the organizers of this event and the opportunity to be able to share with you today. I appreciate it. Today, I just want to make two main points. One has to do more with the political, and the second has to do more with the cultural. So bringing them together and thinking about political cultures is something that I think, in my experience, being in Venezuela, studying, learning about Venezuela, Cuba as well, that I think we can help shape our points of unity in moving forward. Point one, the political. So I'm thinking, Venezuela is a country the size of Texas. There are 35 million about people living in Venezuela. The elected government of Hugo Chavez in the late 1990s began a process that was a participatory democracy process. So I wanted to emphasize this because in thinking about what we're talking about here is this dilemma about how do we build a movement based from the grassroots? How do we actually begin this process? And I know that everyone here in this call is committed to that work. So I have found that the example of Cuba and Venezuela provide important lessons for that process as we're building participatory democracy in the United States. It's not just an adjective. I've learned in research, this is participatory democracy as a structure. It's a structure that organizes neighborhood level involvement in the political decisions and the economy of the country. Annual elections at the block to block level take place. Organizers are hired and brought resources. They bring chairs to the streets. They bring signage that is written sometimes on plain paper out in the street, in the community. There are film screenings that are hosted in very accessible type venues. There are tools for budget transparency that are brought to communities. Meetings are held outside, they're in the workplace and in community centers. And the objective for this is to advance the needs of the people from the grassroots into direct funding from the government. So this is an institutional support for the grassroots, which is really opposite of what we're accustomed to in the United States, where grassroots groups right now are persecuted or defunded or even fragmented by policy, right? And so government in this model is not a weapon or a minefield to navigate, for ordinary people. It's an accessible platform. It's a mechanism that's used by people to solve problems and to innovate on behalf of the collective formations. So when Leonardo was talking about the comunas, the communes, this is a process that over many years and reiterations has been the project of this participatory democracy to bring about. Right now, there are about 30,000 collectives in the country. At one point, it was 30,000 councils, communal councils, and then that number dropped off as they started to reinvent. They created new problem-solving mechanisms for how they could strengthen what the work of the collectives were, and they rebuilt those numbers. And that's very important. I hope to show you at the end and add some clips to show you the kind of popular support that's actually in Venezuela right now, which I think is invisible to us on this side of the media wall. But what we're seeing out of the collectives now are food sovereignty projects, eco-justice projects, exchange where people are creating, different, say one group is working on honey from bees and another is working on, salsa that they're making out of like a ceviche, and they're fisher unions. So they're trading these and exchanging them and creating autonomy and sovereignty. So I witnessed this process firsthand, research, visits. I've seen people that have benefited with this access to funding in schools, environment and protection for land and water, health, access to dentistry, to clinics, to healthier food, not just any food, but actually developing direct farm to table programs, and of course for culture and the arts. So these are microfinancing projects. They're built out of constituent assemblies. There's neighborhood circles, there's street level organizing, and it's creating the bottom up structure. And that's parallel elections to what we see in the National Assembly. So there's the Constituent Assembly and these kinds of structures that are in place that we have to keep in mind. So that's the first point, basically, is about the political in this way. Of course, disinformation has been taking place, like we've all talked about. Disinformation about the Venezuelan political process is anti-democratic. And it's something we don't stop on that idea of the damage and harm of the disinformation enough. The attacks that the country has endured, and we have talked about it's bipartisan and it's been incessant. So these are, sanctions or coercive policies that we've seen against Venezuela. They have harmed people, lands, animals, political sectors. Assets of the country have been seized and sabotaged. And they've been explicitly about regime change. And I want to emphasize that the idea of regime change is to not just see the president change, but to change the model. So what is the threat here is this model of the grassroots, bottom-up, participatory democracy that has been working. And if you look at the data, and the data will show you these figures, you can see that, for example, in the first 10 years, that the poverty index reversed twofold in the country. So this kind of direct funding for the most impoverished neighborhoods and groups of people, and the kind of pluri-democracy, true democracy that can happen through programs that are direct like this, are actually where the base is growing and is able to provide its own systems of autonomy. So when the opposition, and we've named it as being a fascist opposition specifically because it has chosen violence and it has been aligned with this gigantic military force of the United States. And that's been very explicit in their attempt to try to undermine and sabotage and create the conditions for regime change. That is the model to be changed, not just the person who has been elected. So the second point that I want to make is about culture. I think I have just a couple minutes. Is that right? I'll just, sorry, couldn't hear you, Madeline.
Madeline, you're muted.
I'll just
Can you hear me? Keep speaking.
go ahead. Okay, so the cultural reality on the ground right now, you will see murals everywhere. You will see arts projects that are very active. There's
1
cafes,
minute.
there's open plazas. Yeah, I'll make this one brief. There's a giant plaza in the main Bellas Artes district where they put ping pong tables in the middle of the plaza, and there's a Zumba class, and there's African drumming, and people are out and exercising their bodies. And there's a culture that is also about participation and about care and about joining together to solve problems. So that's why the immersion is so important. If you can organize a delegation to go to Venezuela and to participate yourself, you will then be able to see this with your own eyes and you'll understand what I'm saying. The perspective itself will change because you will recognize what's possible with these kinds of models in place. And part of that is there through culture, but most of it is the political culture. So in closing, I want to make sure you know that right now there's a caravan for peace that has just been happening where millions of people pouring out of towns all along this route for across the country, have been able to participate by seeing the people who are their government, because it's a people's government. And so for a country, if they're so concerned about Venezuela up to the point of dropping bombs on a country, to not know or to share or to make available through our media the actual reality on the ground of what's happening there should tell us something already. It should tell us something already. We need a new media here that will tell us the truth. And B, that we are in a position now to invent, to create, and to build something on the blueprint or model of what they have left for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we don't have a lot by the way of questions, but it's a small webinar. We are going to get the recording out there, so you are going to be heard by more. Excuse me, 1 second.
Do you see the questions in the Q&A box?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Barry Bender has an interesting question. Have we seen the expected subversive activities by the United States in regard to the upcoming election in Colombia? And I put that out to anyone who wants to answer.
I will answer that. Yes, in the last 6 months, could be longer than that. We've seen different things going on, as we mentioned before. Trying to stop the election of Ivan Cepeda as the continuation of Petro's administration. And one of those actions is something that Madeline mentioned before, that they bombed an area at the border with Ecuador, saying that they were terrorists and guerrilla, when in fact they were farmers. They killed about 18 people, and some of them, they had them kidnapped for 3-4 days, and they tortured them. And that was with the authorization of Novoa, and we have to mention that there was a meeting, and when was that? A month ago or so, with Trump and all the new right-wing presidents in Latin America.
Mm.
It was Bukele from El Salvador. There was
Okay.
the guy from Honduras. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. Um, the new elected president of Honduras. Um, Milei from Argentina, and Cast from Chile, and Novoa. Yeah. So they met with Trump, and they are working together on this because they want all Latin America to become, right wing, to get right wing presidents. So they're working on that, and the big influence of the Miami Congress people in the right wing in Colombia. They are very close to Uribe. He has come several times and spent time with them, and not just them, but there was last year there was a group of mayors, right wing from the Uribe party that came to United States and talked to congressmen here, including those from Miami, and asking to stop the elections and to take over the country. So that's been on the work for a while now. Yeah.
Mm,
Eileen maybe wants to add something.
Yeah, I'm going to do the positive side of that, the flip side of that, if there is one, and that is that Petro, president of Colombia, has made a big name for himself internationally with his leadership on converting to from fossil fuels. He's also apparently been speaking out about data centers, artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
data centers on the Caribbean coast, and advocating for lighter footprints, whatever that means. I mean, I know what it means, but maybe I would be more inclined to advocate against AI data centers. But that he's made a name for himself there, and then with BRICS, he's made a name for himself with his anti-war activities, especially against the genocide in Gaza. So what I don't know what you think about this, Lily, or anybody else, the possibilities, because he was going to try to get resolution of unity in the United Nations that would go around the Security Council, because every time we all know every time a resolution came before the Security Council, the US would veto it. So I'm just wondering, and I throw this out as a question, can grassroots activism, Angela, you were talking about that in terms of Venezuela, can grassroots activism across the borders, because we have the Eco Action Committee who's done a lot of work on some of these issues, right? And at some point, I was speaking out in solidarity with Colombian activists against fracking, for example, and for protection of the Amazon. That's a big, big issue now. Are there ways that we can build this grassroots unity across the borders? So that's my question for everyone. Because everything that Lily said is true and terrifyingly so. I mean, when Pedro went to DC to meet with Trump, there were people throughout this area who said, don't go, don't go. Make him come here to Colombia, because people were terrified that he would never come back alive. So, I mean, there's all kinds of potholes out there, pitfalls, places to trip up. So that's my question. Mark, I don't know, you might have something to add on that.
Well, just on the data centers, there's a lot of effort in the United States, of course, to do a moratorium on data centers, if not outright ban them. They use a tremendous amount of water So it's a big water issue. And they actually don't create jobs. Most of the time, these type of industrial projects, it's about job creation. That's the big selling point. But that's not the case with data centers. They create very, very few jobs. It's just about, profits for the people running it.
Mm. Yeah, and Barry added that the ones that Petro is supporting are solar powered data centers. And I don't know if that's how much better that is than anything else.
Well, the issue just in the United States is that it's not like, unfortunately, we have a surplus of solar at this point. So when they build solar, it means it's usually diverting it away from other parts of the grid. And it does seem to be an issue, or at least the two corporate parties understand that they are tremendously driving up utility prices to service these data centers. And so instead of stopping the data centers, they're trying to figure out how do we make the data centers pay for themselves rather than jacking up the utility bill so tremendously.
Can I just say one thing real quick? Okay. Barry said that I'm sure there's hundreds of CIA operatives on the ground in Colombia. Yeah, I'm sure about that, but also the presence of DEA in Colombia for decades has been a way of keeping things in place for those interested here, right? And regarding the drug trafficking. And I said it before, and I know some Colombian people wouldn't agree and don't like it, but the DEA are the ones that manage the business in Colombia, because the drug trafficking business, it doesn't belong to Colombia. It might be produced there, but it goes out all the way to here or Europe, and the DA is part of that, and Uribe is part of that. And they are at the airport trying to catch the little fish, to distract the big shipments that go out even from military bases, as it happened a couple years ago. Was one of the biggest shipment of drugs getting out of Colombia from a military base. So that's what they do, because the business is from here. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going, Garrett. I fear I'm going to mangle your name, so I'm apologizing in advance. Garrett Sobsik asks, how is Mexico affecting politics in Latin America? And I just put that out to anybody who wants to answer.
So since the election of AMLO and now with Sheinbaum, Mexico's really been emphasizing the need for sovereignty and non-interference. And so AMLO was one of the few in Latin America that didn't, or not one of the few, but like Mexico was the biggest country in Latin America that didn't recognize Juan Guaido, the so-called interim, the self-proclaimed president of Venezuela back in 2019 on issues of non-interference. And Claudia Sheinbaum recognized President Maduro's victory in 2024. And so they've been playing a really important role in that effect, in that sense, in attempting to kind of mitigate U.S. imperialism. They haven't exactly faced off against the United States. So, for example, Mexico stopped sending oil to Cuba because they've been threatened with tariffs and with sanctions. But also, we have to understand that Mexico is very much under the thumb of U.S. imperialism as well. Just this past week, there were 2 CIA agents who died in a drug raid in Mexico, and it turns out that they were there without the knowledge or the authority of the federal government in Mexico, and that's against the law in Mexico. So clearly we have deep U.S. interference, and Mexico's in a very difficult position. And the thing is that no country can do it alone, right? I think what Latin America and the Caribbean need most is unity, but right now there is no such unity. The U.S., really since the Obama administration, has done a really, good. I mean, they've done their jobs in terms of destroying Latin American Caribbean unity in order to impose U.S. hegemony. They've destroyed multilateral organizations like UNASUR, the Union of South American Nations. They've really hurt others like the CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. And without that sort of unity, I think Latin America is just going to be under the thumb of the U.S. for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Angela, do you want to answer that question too?
Well, just knowing that we might be nearing towards the end of time, I feel almost obliged to put something in there positively for us, but it doesn't come disingenuously. There are, of course, we are in times of crisis, but that also opens up a lot of space for groups like yours or many other groups across the United States to build connections that are meaningful. So those kinds of relationships are possible right now. Things that are very genuine, reaching there, speaking with people, building an alliance, creating the conditions for some kind of trade exchange, creating the conditions for moving across the borders in the ways that that good work among neighbors happens. And so those are the kinds of things that really are finding who are those people who are doing common work and creating those relationships. And I think that means a lot right now. So I see at least a few people in the chat talking about data centers. I know people are concerned about water use, cattle ranching here, AI complex. There are many people in those places that are also engaged with those issues. So I wonder what it would look like to start to see matchmaking, of these groups and actually start to see them connecting and creating a web and building up the capacity to speak across language differences and distance.
Oh, that's really a profound note to bring our program to a close. First, I want to thank everyone who made the time to be here today and share so much wealth of knowledge with our audience. And this will be out on YouTube. We will be able to share it so the message can get out wider. I want to thank anyone who gave tonight. And I'm going to leave that link one more time. And I'm going to ask one more time, anything you can do, there is no amount too small. We are just at such a critical moment. And so, what I find, and I don't want to get on a tangent here, but I find the idea that so many people believe that it's fine to buy democracy. That, well, why are you competing? You can't compete with the Democrats and the Republicans. And what they're saying, in essence, is, they're rich and you're poor. They're big and you're small. And how much of a parallel of that is how the US treats the rest of the world. And we have to break out of it. And it's bigger than just, giving to the Green Party, which is my fundraiser, I've got to ask. But in so many ways, we have to start taking a stand that we cannot just allow them to go with this might makes right mentality that's causing so much human suffering. And I very much appreciate everyone who came tonight, and I hope we can continue this.
Rose, I agree. And I ask Leonardo, there's a person who said he didn't see the files you posted in the chat. Could you post them again?
Or I'll post them again.
Yeah. Yeah, if the I don't want to say little people, but if the people who are not tied to the the duopoly, the corporate duopoly, the single party. If the people who are not part of that, I mean, that pushing Butch Ware off the ballot in California, pushing Lily Benavides off the ballot in New Jersey when she was running for governor. And I'll tell you, I mean, I was here, so I didn't experience it firsthand, here being Colombia. It was like being in a virtual ICE meeting because every name that was taken off the ballot was either a Latina or Latino name or an Arab or a Muslim name, and it was just one after another, like a wrecking ball. And so there's so much evidence when we look at it of discrimination, valuing some people more than others and others less than others. And then you see Britain, you see the UK, and the growth of the Green Party there. It's possible. It is possible. So I'm right there behind Rose. Please, if you can donate something, anything, help us for 2026. Because we've got elections going on all around the country, and we're gonna need, oomph behind us. And unity is so key, so key. We can't let ourselves be split more than we already are. And Angela, you've posted a number of things in the chat too.
I did. I just posted something that's called the Red Deal. It might be of interest for you because it connects the internationalism also to indigenous treaties, and it makes many of the connections that it feels like you're trying to make here. So I thought, for those of you working in this area of the Green Deal, they have a critique on the Green Deal a bit, but it's actually, there's just including these important points that we've been making here. I think it would be a great reference for you. Something to work on there. And then there was also the peregrinación. I don't know if that one came through for the participants here, but they were just things in the media because you need to get through all of the propaganda and there's such a pouring of disinformation. It's very hard to get to the sources. So I was trying to post a few of those links. Did they come through?
Where in the chat?
Yeah.
One thing I'll just quickly note is that many Americans are confused about the Green New Deal. They view the Green New Deal as something that AOC developed, and that was a much more conservative, much more streamlined, far less radical, far less socialist than the Green New Deal that the Green Party, in fact, had put out 8 years previously. And the interesting thing is the woman who actually ran AOC's congressional campaign, when she first won, had been the campaign manager. Somebody ran on the Green Party line in Brooklyn, and we had trained that person on the Green New Deal, and they brought it to AOC, and she watered it down. And so people react to the Green New Deal that was put out by AOC, and that's not our Green New Deal.
Thank you.
All
It's
right.
not okay.
Oh, I hate to be the mean
Thank you.
one to cut off such a fascinating conversation, but it is getting a bit late, and I think we do need to get going for the night. But I'm hoping we can do something like this again in the near future, because I really think this is just the beginning of a longer conversation, because at some point the question really does have to be sort of famous historical question of what is to be done. And we need to move on to that stage of the conversation, because there's both a lot of things to be done, and then, the focus on that solidarity as a real thing, not as something cool that people say, but genuine solidarity. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Rose.
so much to those who
Thank
donated.
you.
We always appreciate you. And thank you so much to our panel of
Thank
distinguished
you.
guests and activists.
Right.
Have a wonderful evening, all.
Good night.
Onward. Good
you.
Thank you.
night.
Onward.
Bye.
Good night.